With us today on the summit is Patrick Wood. Patrick, thanks so much for joining us.
Charlie, welcome, Josh. Good to be here.
Patrick is a leading and critical expert on sustainable development, green economy, UN Agenda 21, 2030 Agenda, and historic technocracy. That basically means he's one of the best researchers out there that in the past decades has really helped to delve into the conversation around these topics and around how the dots connect behind the scenes. He's the author of Technocracy Rising and co-author of Trilaterals Over Washington, Volumes 1 and 2, with the late Anthony C. Sutton. Wood remains a leading expert on the elitist Trilateral Commission, their policies and achievements in creating their self-proclaimed new international economic order, which is the essence of sustainable development on a global scale. So we're going to be diving into it today. We're going to be kind of, separating out the truth from the lies and really distilling some dot connecting. We're going to get into solutions. We're going to get into really understanding the bigger picture here in terms of technocracy. Technocracy is a word that's, you're really helping, Patrick, to bring forward into our lexicon to understand how technology is intentionally being used to be the new control mechanism in our society. So let's dive right in. Tell us about your perspective. What is 5G? What is the Internet of Things? And how do they intersect? What's the purpose here?
Right, exactly. Just to lay a little bit of background, technocracy originally was conceived at Columbia University in 1932. They got kicked out. The whole group got kicked out of Columbia for a couple of reasons, but they started a commercial operation called Technocracy Incorporated, where they had membership, people paid dues, they had membership card, and it was very popular in America. They had up to 600,000 card-carrying members at one time. It was a pretty big deal. Pretty much fizzled out in the late 1930s, but it was resuscitated in the late 1960s, early 1970s, with the foundation of the Trilateral Commission, 1973 in particular, with David Rockefeller and Zbigniew Brzezinski. Brzezinski had written a book while he was at Columbia University, by the way, called Between Two Ages, America's Role in the Technotronic Era. That's what started the modern iteration of technocracy again. We could call it neo-technocracy. I just choose not to because nobody knows what technocracy is anyway, so I don't have to really make that distinction. But the Trilateral Commission fed the doctrine of technocracy to the United Nations in 1992 under the auspices of sustainable development. We hear this everywhere today: sustainable this, sustainable that, sustainable development. It's a resource-based economic system that depends on allocation of resources, not allocation by a price-based economic system, which we understand today, but direct allocation of resources by the quote unquote, the managers of those resources. And now the UN has kind of got this idea of setting up a global common trust where resources will be transferred to them. They will manage the allocation and the licensing and so on of resources, and you and I will basically be excluded. The program completely wipes out private property, not allowed. The United Nations has sworn that they are going to uproot capitalism and free enterprise altogether for the sake of replacing it with sustainable development. All of this is baseline stuff, and I cover all that in my books. I'm not going to go into it a lot more, but this is kind of the background. In the original Bible, if you will, of technocracy, it was called the Technocracy Study Course, written by M. King Hubbard mostly. That also was the guy that started peak oil theory, by the way, in 1954. We've heard a lot about that too, but Hubbard was a co-founder of the Technocracy Incorporated organization. And in that, they described the criteria that were necessary for technocracy to take root. In that criteria, energy management was number one. They wanted to track every single erg of power that was used within the economic system. Secondly, They wanted to surveil and monitor everything in society, all consumption, all production, where people were, what they were doing, and so on. They didn't have the technology back then, but we do today. And I believe they saw the day when technology was coming, if for no other reason that when they were at Columbia, they were housed together in the same area with the early iteration of IBM, which was then making the first Hollerith computer, the tabulator. It was later used in Germany and Europe and so on for tracking statistics and things like concentration camps and ugly stuff like that. Well, anyway, they were rubbing shoulders with visionaries, and they considered themselves to be visionaries anyway because they were with Columbia University after all. So that is the background. Technology now has matured greatly since 1973. We have things today that were barely even conceived of back then. As computers have advanced, as software technology has advanced, for instance, we now have artificial intelligence. This was not really a discipline back in 1973 at all. We now have the ability to transmit data in ways that we never conceived of back in 1973 using wireless technology. This new body, this recent body of technology now is being used to accomplish the original goals of technocracy. That's my point in this whole thing. The technology has advanced. Some people would say, well, it's just people inventing things after all. Well, that's probably true in a sense. But as soon as it's invented, the technology gets hijacked by this group of technocrats, if you will, turned around, weaponized, and used back against the people that it seeks to control. That's where we are today. We'll talk about 5G. I'll throw this out. 5G is not about cell phones. It's being sold that way. Your cell phone is going to be so much faster. You can get the latest and greatest new iPhone. You could pay whatever, probably by the time it comes out, you're going to pay $2,000 for a smartphone that will do 5G, and you can get your movies downloaded in 3 seconds instead of 3 minutes. I say, well, what a benefit. It's not about cell phone speed up. I've listened to the speeches of the CEOs of Verizon, T-Mobile, AT&T, and consistently you can see them salivating, not over voice communications or human communication on cell phones, but they're salivating over the Internet of Things. And this is what they're talking incessantly about, that 5G is going to light up the Internet of Things that will allow all of the data collection, all of the devices out there that could be connected to the Internet is going to draw all that data back in real time. And when I say real time, that's hard for most people to understand what that means. The latest wireless technology, 4G, is fast, no doubt. But 5G takes it to a completely different level. Not only are the data transmission speeds higher, much higher, but the other factor in internet communications is called latency. Latency has to do with how long it takes that first little ping back and forth to say, I'm ready to send, and the other one says, I'm ready to receive. And so they has to go back and forth all the time, determining, are you ready to receive it, are you ready to send it? Now, this sounds like a minuscule thing. Typically in a home situation where you have a Wi-Fi router, your latency time can be something like 20 to 30 milliseconds. You say, whoa, that's really fast. And it is, but it's not real time. 5G technology has gotten the latency period down to 1 millisecond or less. This is incredible. This is absolutely revolutionary. What this means is the sensors embedded in a city will be able to send data in real time back to the central computer, where artificial intelligence will be waiting to analyze it, to model it, to to extract all of the useful information out of it. This is what the big carriers are salivating over. They want that data. We used to say in the 70s, Josh, follow the money, follow the power. That's still true to some extent. Well, of course it is. Money always seems to come into it somewhere. Mm-hmm. But today, as far as technocracy is concerned, here's how you watch this. Follow the data, follow the power. Go where the data is. Look for the data flow. Look for who's receiving, not first collecting, and then look who's receiving the data and what are they doing to it. All of the people in the data world today are claiming that data is the new oil of the 21st century. And they're absolutely right. The money and the value today, the income stream, is in the data that these technocrats are able to extract from society. So when you talk about smart city, implementing all these sensors around, whether they be light poles with microphones and cameras and the 5G transmitters, whether it be sensors in elevators and buildings and thermostats and smart meters on the sides of homes and businesses and smart meters for the water and the gas, all the kind of stuff. Autonomous vehicles, by the way, driving around in the city and so on, all those things are going to be connected via the Internet of Things. By the time they're done implementing 100% smart city technology in one given area, a computer with sufficient resources will be able to literally to model the city in real time and to rotate it and look into it in different areas they want to look at. This has never been possible.
What are some of the applications of that? And before you answer that, I'll just maybe say that I have a good friend who says, has coined this saying, "We scare because we care." And so we're gonna go into a little bit of these, might potentially scary areas to really look at like what this technology is and or could be used for, so that we can deal with this, with what is actually happening, bring the conversation forward, and intentionally, change courses, change course collectively. Like that's what we're talking about here, right? We're talking about like having a period of time in which we're coming to terms with this reality. We're investigating solutions and we're getting intentional about it. But let's just go into this, Patrick. Like what are some of your deepest concerns? What are you seeing in terms of application here and in the future with this technology?
This whole body of truth we're talking about here has to do with social control. That's what technocracy was about in the first place. That's what sustainable development is about today with Agenda 21 and 2030 Agenda and the New Urban Agenda and so on from the United Nations. It's about social control. This is what the Green New Deal is all about, that AOC has introduced into our country with a firestorm, I might add. Everybody's talking about it now. This is about social control, getting you to do what they want you to do. It takes away private choice. It takes away citizen choice. It takes away citizen concerns completely and says, essentially, this is such an ego trip. We know what's best for you. You should trust us to make all your decisions for you. Why? Your purchasing decisions, your medical decisions, your travel decisions, your consumption decisions, how many children you have decisions, everything under the sun is envisioned right now, is on the table for them to exercise social control over you and I. This is not just by mistake or unintended. This is the way it was from the beginning. Now we're really feeling the bite, Josh, is the problem. Look at China. China has implemented this social credit scoring system over there that's affected every person in their country. All 1.4 billion people have been enrolled into the social credit system with their pictures, with biometric data, with all of the data, everything that happens, they know, the government does. They're applying artificial intelligence now to rank and rate and sort all of the people in the country, the outliers that are troublemakers, like you and me, The outliers are simply dropped out of the system. They're excluded. There's 13 million people right now in China on the blacklist that have been relegated to be second-class citizens. They can't travel the way other people do. They can't go to the same schools that other people want to go to. They can't live in the same areas that other people want to live in. They can't buy the same stuff that other people want to buy. This is so dystopian. It's beyond dystopia. This is what's coming to America because this is the heartbeat of technocracy. This is the heartbeat of social control.
Wow. And I remember you writing on things like pre-crime, right? That movie Minority Report that probably a lot of people are familiar with. Do you want to touch on that and how, and any other specific ways that you've been reporting on your website, Technocracy News, other specific ways that this technology is sought to be implemented?
Well, you have it. Pre-crime is a pretty good example. You have in our country today, in America today, a rollout of surveillance technology that's very similar, if not identical, to what's being used in China. Although American companies now have the technology and they're selling it to police departments across America. Mm-hmm. Exactly the same concept and functionality of the software used in China to be able to identify people walking down a street using a public camera, tracking people by name, put a little box or whatever balloon over their head saying, there goes Josh Hole. He's going down to get coffee at his favorite coffee place or whatever. This technology in America is being sold to police departments across the country right now by aggressive pinstripe suit type, not IBM salesmen, but that's kind of the picture you have when you have professional salespeople. They're going out to police departments to market this surveillance software. Police departments are gobbling it up at incredible rates. And a lot of people say this isn't legal, or it isn't right, or whatever, that we don't want that here. But police departments come to find out, Josh, there is no federal regulation, not one single federal regulation or law that prevents a local police department from implementing this ubiquitous type of surveillance software. Mm-hmm. And implementing any kind of AI software for pre-crime analysis that they can get their hands on. It's just a matter of money. Now, police departments don't have a lot of money, so as the price came down on this software and hardware combinations, more and more police departments said, we can afford that. Why, we can get rid of maybe a half a dozen patrolmen we don't need anymore, and we'll use their salary to pay for it. That's what they've done. So now this is sweeping America. Americans individually yet have not caught up mentally with what's going on in police enforcement across our country. But when they use this pre-crime technique to try and predict where crime is going to happen, when it's going to happen, and by who it's going to be perpetrated, this goes into such dangerous ground, because to a technocrat mind, it's perfectly acceptable to be 90% accurate. If they can get something that's 90% accurate, why, they're thrilled. It's wonderful. We have pre-crime analysis, and we can go out now and do all this stuff. But here's what they just ignored. What about the 10%? Mm-hmm. What about the 10% that get busted for something that had nothing to do with? Yeah. This is such dangerous, utopian-like thinking that Americans haven't yet got their mind around. 90% isn't good enough. That's not the way America ever worked. Our legal system, our justice, the rule of law. Okay, it's not perfect because maybe people aren't perfect sometimes, but the rule of law applied the same law to everybody uniformly. Not so with pre-crime analysis software or any other thing like that works on artificial intelligence. It's not going to apply it equally. It's been proven to have biases. In other words, the bias of the programmer has been seen now to be reflected in the software. And 90% accuracy leaves the other 10% out in the cold to get busted for any cockeyed thing that somebody comes up with. And even if they are proven not guilty in the end, they've ruined their life in the meantime by the mere accusation that they did something.
Yeah, this is, I mean, thank you so much for painting that picture, because this is obviously scary to move from the rule of law to an AI system making assumptions that affect people's rights. And that, because that's what we're talking about here. It's technocracy. It's the potential for chaos. It's the potential for, complete and utter dependence on the system and loss of individual rights and common order. So thank you for that. That's obviously it's disturbing. So Patrick, you've also been doing work on exposing smart region initiatives, smart cities and smart region initiatives. Tell us about that.
Well, okay. First, we have the technology. We've talked a little bit about some of the things that go into smart city. We've missed a lot of stuff too. It's a very complex area, and it's a big area.
Yeah.
But we've kind of laid the groundwork. There is some really disturbing technology out there that these technocrats are trying to impose upon cities to, to implement the data pump, to get data out of the cities. The money is in the data, remember. So when you hear these large companies like the AT&Ts of the world talking about getting this smart city technology out to entire cities, they're talking about creating a huge data pump within that city. Now, there's a problem in cities. That problem not to us. We are the city. The problem to them is that there's those pesky city councils out there that they just continue to ask questions, and they continue to want to know, well, how is this going to really protect our citizens? And they're our representatives, right? We elect them. We may not like some of them. I don't like all of mine, but still, they're on the front line to protect the people in the city and do things for the city the way the city wants them to be done, the people.
Yeah.
Technocrats hate, this entire smart city crowd hates city councils, because there's so many of them. There's thousands and thousands of cities across the country that are kind of woke, if you will, now. They're watching for this kind of stuff. So instead of trying to go directly to the cities to negotiate for smart city technology implementation, in Phoenix, Arizona, of all places, there's a pilot program going on right today that every other community in the country is watching like a hawk. And it's called Smart Region Initiative. How it started here, Arizona State University, which bills themselves as being the most sustainable university in the country, they actually offer up to a PhD degree in sustainable development. So they're really up on it. They have risen up, gotten a hold of 3 other NGOs in the area. One is a Chamber of Commerce-like organization. Another is just a new startup, a data development management company. And they've all created this consortium together called the Smart Region Initiative. This is very similar, similar to the Council of Government concept that's already implemented across the country. It's a form of regional government, patently unconstitutional, by the way, but it's out there. We have locally a councils of governments called the Maricopa Association of Governments. It also is concerned with 22 cities and 4.2 million people, something like that. And the Smart Region Initiative is working hand in hand with the Maricopa Association of Governments to develop smart city technology to be implemented across the region. Okay.
Without the consent or permission or approval of any city government. That's the basis of this FCC law that basically is a power grab, right? I mean, they don't want to have to ask permission anywhere.
You're absolutely right. So the cities have contributed no input to this group whatsoever. There's no elected officials belongs to this particular group. In the case of the Maricopa Association of Governments, every city is supposed to contribute one council person to this larger regional council. But that does not give representation to the people in the cities. That's a model of the European Union, for Pete's sake, where you give, where each country gets to send one or two representatives to the EU Congress to get 2 minutes to say something once a year, but complain.
Yeah.
So this form of regional governance is off the wall. But in the case of smart city technology, this little consortium, this little cozy consortium of academia, ASU, along with these other nonprofit groups who have all kinds of different motives for being there in the first place, they have simply stood up and said, we know what's best for this region. And they don't know anything about this region other than most of them may live here. They don't know the 4.2 million people in this region. And this whole thing, the whole program, Josh, is absolutely bogus as far as I'm concerned. It should be scrubbed off the face of the map. However, because the cities and the Maricopa Association of Governments are involved in this, all of a sudden they have this newfound authority in the eyes of people that live here. Mm-hmm. Oh, you mean the Smart Region Initiative says we need to do it this way, huh? Yep, that's what they said. Whoa, I guess we better do it that way then. They're not even questioning these decisions that come down. In the meantime, this is a absolute gold mine for the AT&Ts, the T-Mobiles, and so on of the world, the Verizons that are coming in, setting up this data pump, because now they can get uniform deployment of technology across the entire region. And imagine how much more valuable that is to them than having 22 individual systems having to be negotiated, implemented, et cetera, around. Now they get everything in one fell swoop. They get it faster because it's going to be done all at once across the entire region. And meantime, the region here in our area, I can tell you, knows nothing about this whatsoever. They're completely oblivious. There's been no publicity, maybe just a couple of press releases sent out, but no publicity whatsoever. And even worse, people from all over our country are looking at Phoenix as an example, waiting, saying to themselves, if they do it, man, we're on the bandwagon. We're right behind them. We're going to do it too. There's even people in Europe that watching the Phoenix situation right now. They want to do the same thing, set up these smart region initiatives where they can just blanket the whole technology, the whole suite of things across an entire region. And in our case in Phoenix, they're going to catch 22 cities and 4.2 million people. Bang, slam dunk.
Wow. So with smart meters, that has gone forward in the name of climate action. With 5G, that is being pushed forward in the name of convenience, or keeping up with the progress of technology, or competition with China. And it's like a new Cold War, right? That's been kind of propped up, perhaps, between US and China. Isn't that what Trump is saying? Why he wants 5G, 6G, and any kind of G?
Well, yeah, any kind of G. President Trump has said that the United States must win the 5G war. Whenever you have something complex like this, the way to get it done quickly is to turn it into a race. I've seen this so many times. When in fact, I used to do this with my two young sons when they were young. All you had to do was suggest, let's have a race, let's run or whatever. Oh yeah, well, they want to compete against each other. That was guaranteed to burn off some energy, if nothing else. Mm-hmm. Anytime, like President Trump says, we have a race with China, we have to beat China. Everybody all of a sudden, that's a challenge. That's a challenge. Oh, you darn right we need to beat China. Why? Those people over there are doing all kinds of things to their citizens, whatever. We need to beat them to the punch and do it even worse. I say this jokingly, do it even worse to our people. But this is the mentality, I believe, of the Trump administration saying we need to beat China in this race. They're actually speeding up the implementation of 5G in our country. We've seen them work through the FCC, which you just alluded to take away the authority of cities to charge and do independent negotiations with carriers. And so now there's a federal mandate from the top down to get this 5G stuff implemented. And it goes even beyond that, because all of the smart city things we're talking about, Josh, are part of a larger construct called infrastructure. Infrastructure, we think of it as there's a pothole in front of my house, I'd like to get it fixed, or there's a bridge that is unsafe down the road, I'd like to see that fixed. That's not infrastructure to the technocrat mind. Infrastructure is all of the electronic stuff that's being implemented across the country to connect people and cities together, and the data centers together to suck the data. This is infrastructure. Just recently, President Trump emerged from a meeting with Senator Chuck Schumer and Representative Nancy Pelosi, having concluded a deal for infrastructure spending in America. Schumer came out of the meeting, he's an arch enemy of Trump. He hates Trump's guts, and I think probably vice versa. He came out of the meeting saying, we had a great meeting with the president. Why? He even suggested more money than we suggested for infrastructure, and he upped the ante. And so President Trump put on the table for infrastructure spending $2 trillion.
Wow.
Huge. Where will this $200 million go? Are they talking about bridges? Are they talking about potholes? Are they talking about repaving the freeways? No, they're not. They're talking about the infrastructure that we're talking about here to blanket our country with smart city technology and everything that goes to shore it up for the largest social engineering project in the history of the world.
Wow. And I just want to confirm, is it 2 trillion or 200 million?
2 trillion.
2 trillion, right. The two vastly different numbers. I just want to clarify that. So, wow. So, this, I just want to kind of put this in context. I'm kind of struggling to do so right now, other than to say that this is the biggest thing that's happening. What Patrick is talking about is 5G. We need to understand that. It's not just a one-dimensional thing, conversation. So this is going to be something that we encourage you, do your own research on and get educated about this aspect, this dot connecting aspect of 5G, because this, I think, Patrick, perhaps could help people really understand the why, really understand things in a big picture, and really be able to then reach an even larger amount of people with this information. So it's not just about the health. That is a serious concern, that this is going forward with no safety studies. Would you agree?
I would agree.
But there's this huge other conversation. So yeah, please continue. Help us to contextualize this and lead us to, eventually we want to get to what specifically are our best steps to take.
All right, let me just add on top of this the philosophical idea, which is prevalent with this whole technocrat crowd going back to the 30s, going through the United Nations. We see this everywhere. When we talk about resources, we're thinking about timber, lumber, oil, food coming off the land, things getting mined out of the earth, resources. We think of water as a resource. To the technocrat mind, resources also include you and me. All humans are simply resources on the table with all these other resources that need to be worked and managed in concert with each other to save the planet, so to speak. I say save the planet figuratively. That's what they say. They're not saving the planet, trust me. Mm-hmm. But humans are reduced to being simply another resource on the face of the earth, no different than the cattle or the sheep or the goats or anything else, even trees in the forest and farmland growing cauliflower out, on the farm. We're just resources to be managed. We're no better, in their mind, we're no better than a cow or a sheep. And so we're just there to be managed. Now, when Americans or when people concerned about the health effects of 5G get all worked up and they go to whoever they go to protest, when they're facing a technocrat, in the technocrat's mind, why are you talking to me? Why should I care? You have to break a few eggs to make an omelet. So what's the problem here? You're just a resource. Don't you understand? You're just a resource. The health issue. We don't care about the health issues because you know what? If you got 50,000 cattle in a feedlot, you obviously don't want to lose a whole herd. That would be dumb. But you know what? Cattle die in a feedlot for all kinds of reasons. They pull up a tractor, they put them in the bucket, and they haul them off. They take them to the sausage grinder or something. I don't know. Ooh, that brings up another bad thought about an old movie called Soylent Green. I didn't mean it, folks. But you see, when you reduce humanity to be just another animal, the mindset that comes out of that, Josh, is dangerous and it's anti-human. In my opinion, it's flat out anti-human. So all of the health concerns, if you're addressing technocrats, will fall on deaf ears. They won't have anything to say to you because they're going to be looking at you and saying, you guys are really crazy to be talking about this to us because, you know, there's just nothing to be concerned about here. Who are you anyway? You know, you're just an animal like all the other animals.
Let's talk about this sort of anti-human type mentality. I mean, perhaps it can be in the microcosm, it can be, you know, that part that we struggle within. It could be the dissociative mind or the ego or whatever, right? But on the larger scale, it seems to be that yes, there is like this, whatever force or source it's coming from, it is a collective unconsciousness that seems to be, you know, have a death wish, let's say, or have a death wish and then project that onto other people in the context of control. So this is something that, again, another aspect of this I came across perhaps when reading your work about the Club of Rome, in which they concluded, basically they created the context for this battle. What's the takeaway from, you know, what did the Club of Rome do or say, and what's the takeaway?
First, I'll say there was great overlap between the Club of Rome and the Trilateral Commission, and we wrote about that in our book, Trilaterals Over Washington, back in the 70s. What the Club of Rome did is they threw up a kind of an Al Gore-esque panic attack, sky is falling, by saying that, you know, we have a radical shortage of resources in the world, and if we don't allocate those resources more wisely, that we're all going to die, and you know, humanity is going to come to a screeching halt. Well, their book, their work called Limits to Power was widely circulated amongst the global elite, especially. I doubt many people, even in this audience that we're addressing right now, probably have ever heard of that book before, but it had a huge impact on the global elite. And so the Club of Rome prescribed essentially everything that the United Nations is doing today with resource management, resource-based economic system, control all the resources. Myself and Sutton said this, by the way, even though we didn't understand technocracy back in the early days, as I do now. Mm-hmm. We said that the goal of the global elite was to get their hands on the resources directly, not just on the money that comes out of them, generated from them, but get their hands on the resources directly. This makes sense in a historical sense. This makes very good sense to them, not to me, but it does to them, because there comes a time when money runs out of usefulness. There comes a time when money becomes worthless by definition because they're chipping away at it a little bit more every year. Since 1913, the dollar's lost like 99% of its value. There's going to come a time when it's 100% and money will mean nothing. We're almost to that point right now, by the way. But when money becomes worthless, and I think they saw this even back in 73, when money becomes worthless, what do you do for an encore? Well, if you control and own the resources, it doesn't matter what type of accounting system you put on top of it. If you got the resources and everybody else wants them, just wait for it to sort itself out and you're going to own everything again. You got the resources in your pocket. This is why the United Nations has been busy gobbling up heritage zones and stuff around the world. This is why in our country, in America now, the U.S. government owns, I think, 36% of the land mass of our nation is owned by the government. And people go, what? our government owns that much property. Yes, they do. Are they allowed to? Well, the Constitution doesn't say they can, but they just went and did it. And that's land that you and I can't use for legitimate economic purposes. And the United Nations is doing this all around the world. So the global elite now are in a position to, I think, one day let the financial system go altogether. It won't matter to them anymore because they will have the actual resources behind everything to recreate themselves in any way they want to recreate themselves when the time comes.
Well, tell us about some of your work has gotten into opportunity zones. What is that?
Boy, this is new. And this is, again, I get shocked. People say, how could you get shocked? I get shocked at stuff I run across that I never saw coming. And I think my ears to the ground on a lot of stuff. Recently, I discovered this whole opportunity zone concept. This was created by an act of Congress in December 2017, signed into law by President Trump. And it was called, let's see, I'll tell you what it was called. It was called the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017. In that act was a provision to create opportunity zones. These are supposed to be low-income designations within states that that will achieve certain tax advantages if people invest into these opportunity zones. They're self-certifying zones. The governors of every state were allowed to define, well, what do you want in your state to be an opportunity zone? So they started drawing the maps, whatever, in every state. The president then signed an executive order, and 1 year later, in December of 2018, that created a national, administrative council, including some cabinet members, that will shepherd the Opportunity Zone Initiative across America. So it's actually been formalized within the government now as a big thing. Today, Josh, there are 8,700 opportunity zones created across America. And they're all focused on investing money into these areas. Now, here's the thing about this. If you have an asset that has a very, very low tax base, that's, in other words, you bought it maybe for a penny, now it's worth $100. Mm-hmm. If you sell that asset, you're going to pay through the nose capital gains taxes. Big investors hate that because it just drives their income, and they pay the highest possible income tax rate on it. And so they want to avoid capital gains taxes anywhere they can. Well, this opportunity zone setup allows for somebody to sell assets like that, reinvest the money into the opportunity zone, and defer their capital gains taxes for at least 6 years. Now, that's huge. And what we've seen in practice so far is that the biggest opportunity here is for public-private partnerships to be created where people can pool their money together in these opportunity zones, invest the money into the city on anything they want, including light poles or sensors or street sensors or anything else, invest the money in there, and they can reap whatever benefits they can get out of it. And they defer their taxes for a long time. Now, what's happened in practice so far is that I found some opportunity zones early on that said, this is our opportunity to implement smart city technology in that area, in that low income area. Well, low income areas have no ability really to fight anything like this because they're low income, they don't have the resources. They don't have the political infrastructure probably, and they simply just don't have the money. Maybe they don't have the education. So it's easy to get this implemented. So here's the big question. Where did this legislation in 2017 come from? Who backed it? And what was it all about? The founder of this organization called the Economic Innovation Group, that was kind of the primary NGO behind this legislation. The founder and executive chairman is Sean Parker. Now, for those who don't recognize Sean Parker's name, I'll just read one line from his bio. He was a co-founder of Napster at age 19 and Plaxo at 21. In 2004, he joined with Mark Zuckerberg to develop the online social network Facebook. Has anybody ever heard of Facebook?
Wow.
And served as Facebook's founding president. And the bio goes on. But you get the point. Here is a guy who is Mr. Data himself, right?
Yeah.
And
Wow.
he's pushing this. Now, I can tell you what, this is all about the data. Remember I said follow the data, follow the power? This is a data grab of epic proportions. We'll see how it plays out.
Yeah. Before we get into actions, kind of moving towards wrapping up here, Patrick, I wanted just to touch into this. So 5G linked with Internet of Things, linked with AI, linked with transhumanism. What's your take on that?
Well, it is, and I've suggested this quite a bit. Both transhumanism and technocracy.
First, let's define it. What is transhumanism?
Well, transhumanism is the religious proposition that through the use of advanced technology, that man can escape the human condition. In layman's terms, that means can become immortal. They want to escape death. That's the bottom line. This philosophy and the father of transhumanism and the father of technocracy are the same person. It just so happens it's the same person. You can check the books on it. If anybody doesn't believe that, you can. His name is Henri de Saint-Simon. He was a French philosopher that lived around 1800. He wrote extensively on both topics, and he is now considered to be the father of both. He developed the religious concept of scientism, that science was the solution to man's everything. Got a problem? Scientists can come in and save the day because they're better than everyone else. They're smarter and they can predict the future. Well, we're not going to go into scientism right now, but there's a lot been written about scientism. C.S. Lewis, by the way, wrote a number of papers on against scientism, fighting it, debunking it, if you will. Transhumanism is based on the concept of scientism. We can use the technology to escape death. That's the ultimate problem. And
merging man and machine.
That's right. And I describe it like this. Technocracy is to the formation of society as transhumanism is to the people who will inhabit society. That makes sense. Okay, so a technocratic society would be most perfectly filled by transhumans. The transhuman philosophy believes today that by using this advanced technology, they will create humanity 2.0. They believe through genetic modification, especially, that they can hijack, literally, the forces of evolution. Okay, now evolution is not a Christian biblical concept, of course, but to those who come from an evolution frame of mind in the first place, where they believe everything was just incidental and just happened to happen, they believe now that through science they can take over the process of evolution and direct future evolution themselves. This is really twisted. I hate to tell you. It's just, wow, these people are out on a limb. They think that they're going to create humanity 2.0. Now, humanity 2.0 would be the perfect type of humanity to live within a purely technocratic society.
So when you say they, like the elite, you're talking about the Trilateral Commission, the Club of Rome, the Bilderberg Group, right?
Anybody that adopts that philosophy, absolutely. Yeah. There's there's millions of people outside of those elite groups that you could look at and call, see them involved in scientism. You could call them a technocrat. You could call them a transhuman. they may not have any idea what the global elite is doing, but the philosophy has permeated, the religion of it has permeated people's thinking process. And it is
Yeah.
a religion. Scientism is a religion.
Well, isn't it just materialism? It's what can happen, the depths of depravity to which the human mind can go when it ceases to see the essence, the of value, or the spark of divinity or the soul in other human beings, right?
Science becomes a god. Bottom line, to a scientismist, science is the god. Science can do no wrong. Science is settled. Science is indisputable. Do what science says. You can't. Don't be a denier, or you'll be punished. It's
Right.
a religious proposition all the way down the line. But science is set up as some kind of an immutable God that can provide answers for everything man wants to know. All truth man wants to know is found in science. Just listen to science. Don't listen to God. Don't listen to ethics or moral discussion or whatever. Just listen to science.
Right. Wow. Well, you've given us a ton to think about today, Patrick, and thank you for helping to bring light to all of these topics. And really just to explain the why, the bigger picture, the dot connecting around 5G. I really appreciate that on behalf of the audience. Just as we wrap up here, what can you tell us in terms of solutions? Where, from your perspective, where do you see it most effective for the people to put their energy if we want a positive future outcome here?
Absolutely. At this point, the only possible line of defense that we can put in place is at the local level, the city and county level. And I encourage people to get active locally, to get to know their city council people, to run for city council, to run for all kinds of the various offices around their city and in their county. Get on any kind of board you can get on, and get your seat at the table. Somebody, a liberal, actually suggested one time to a friend of mine, if you don't have a seat at the table, you are what's for dinner. Don't do that anymore. You can get involved in your local civic matters and make a huge difference. Case in point, of all places, San Francisco. San Francisco, the bastion of liberalness and progressiveness in America. There's no city I know, and I was born there, I should know. There's no city in America that's more progressive and liberal and off the wall than San Francisco. Their city council just banned facial recognition technology from the city.
Excellent.
They banned it. Okay, don't tell me that the cities don't have power. They do. But if the citizens don't go and request the local city magistrates and the council members to take a stand on their behalf on these issues, they won't do it. You have to go and get involved. That's one reason, by the way, that I created Citizens for Free Speech last year, in turn, which created localactivist.org as a social networking platform just for local activists to go after issues like this. And people are welcome to go there if they want to, localactivist.org, and sign up. And believe me, if you come in and you're disingenuous and you're a troll or you've got some other idea that you're going to crack the safe, we'll throw you out faster than a country heartbeat. This is a private network for people like us that are really desiring to get in and set our country back straight again on a local basis. And you can check it out, citizensforfreespeech.org and localactivist.org.
Excellent. Patrick, thank you so much. I absolutely, to the highest level, recommend that people check out your book, Technocracy Rising, and also your previous work, which was Trilaterals Over Washington. And you just bring such a grounded, research-based depth without the conspiracy theory and help us to really understand. And there it is.
And my latest book, by the way, Technocracy, The Hard Road to World Order. I'm not sure you've seen this one yet.
I haven't seen that one. Thank you for letting us know about that.
Absolutely. This is the more current iteration of how kind of like what we've been talking about here, using current examples to demonstrate these initiatives and stuff on how they're implementing technocracy. So it's worthwhile. I call it connecting the dots.
Absolutely. Yeah. And just to everyone watching out there, I just want to, just from my heart, you heard Patrick's message just right now about how important it is to educate and communicate with your local officials right now. Not only your local officials, but local community members and people both online and offline. So I just wanted, this is off the cuff, I just wanted to, I'm just trying to figure out from a business standpoint if this is even possible. But I'd want to somehow encourage you to share this talk and this series with your local governments. That's one of the reasons why we're putting on this summit. So please, we're going to make it more clear how you can do that. But if you do purchase this series at the end of the free period, you have my permission to take that video and put it on a zip drive, or upload it privately and send a link to your local elected officials. Okay, this is really important that we understand that this is the type of research right here being done by Patrick and others on the summit that can change minds and perspectives of those in positions of power and gatekeepers in local government. So while we don't have everything defined, we do know that our intention is to get this out to as many people as possible, and I, from my heart, want to support that as being as easy as possible. So Patrick, thank you so much for your time today. This has been an incredible conversation, and we look forward to keep in touch with you.
Thanks for the opportunity, Josh. I really appreciate it.